Welcome to Politics Unusual. I'm Morgan McKay. It's somehow only been less than a week since Mayor Eric Adams dropped his re-election bid, but now there are just 3 candidates running to be New York City's next mayor. So first, we're sitting down with Brooklyn Borough President Antonio Reynoso. Then we're speaking with former Council Minority Leader Joe Borelli. Both guests are going to weigh in on issues impacting this mayoral election. Then we're checking in on the governor's race in New Jersey. But first, 4 projects are now in the running to secure one of the 3 casino licenses that will be issued to downstate developers. 2 bids in Queens, 1 in the Bronx, and another in Yonkers were approved by their community boards. 4 projects were also voted down, 3 in Manhattan and 1 in Brooklyn. So joining us now is Brooklyn Borough President Antonio Reynoso. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
So let's start with that casino bid. This casino would have been on the boardwalk of Coney Island, really just changed that entire landscape. You voted no. Explain why.
Well, we had over 10 applications. And if you really look through the applications, the ones that made sense were all in Manhattan, in areas that were non-residential, that had all the foot traffic, 24-hour tourism, and just had the infrastructure to take it on. And they were all voted down because of NIMBYist interest, right? There's a not in my backyard interest by the people of Manhattan. And then you have these other applications, like the Coney Island one, that just didn't make sense locally. We have no way to get there. Maybe if we get a ferry, that would be great, but there's one train line and the Belt Parkway, which is always a nightmare for traffic. And also, they gave the least amount of community-based agreements to the local neighborhood. I think it was up to like $200 or $300 million, when we have $1.2 billion coming from Steve Cohen, coming from these other potential locations. It was the smallest application. I think that they were punching above their weight class. There are other places that make more sense. So ultimately, we decided that we weren't going to move forward with it.
Yeah, Coney Island, the people's playground, it would have really changed that landscape. And the developers tried at the 11th hour to try to sweeten the pot a little bit, but to you guys, it didn't work.
No, and that's part of the case we try to make to them. They should have brought all these sweeteners, like what you would call it, 3 months before the process started. Not allow for 2 public meetings to happen where the community is literally just like fighting and so much tension. If they would have presented more options, they added about $600 million worth of goods the day before the vote. And it's just like, it's an example that they always had this in hand. They had $600 million somewhere, and they didn't want to give it to the community because they thought they had the vote in hand. When they saw the vote wasn't a go, they last minute inserted these things. So again, it was just a bad proposal that they tried to make reasonable at the end, and it was too late.
Now, I want to turn quickly to the mayor's race. So you replaced Mayor Adams as Brooklyn Borough President. What are your thoughts about your predecessor dropping out of the mayor's race here?
Look, I think his time was up. Unfortunately, his tenure wasn't the best that he would call it. It wasn't the best. Like, I actually think that outside of the corruption, which is important, and the pettiness and the lack of professionalism within his inner circle, that the mayor didn't do a terrible job. But his relationship to the Trump administration and like his inability to recognize his faults, and in his 9-minute video blamed everyone except himself and his inner circle for the turmoil that happened within his administration. I think it's just like a terrible self-assessment that happened there. But look, his time is up, and I think people are ready to move on.
Yeah, people have praised him for his ability to reduce some crime and his housing proposals. But as you mentioned, the corruption. Now, you recently spoke about how you were told by federal investigators when you entered office to not accept contributions from foreign entities. Explain more.
Yeah, so when I got in, before all this controversy happened, I came into Borough Hall, and Borough Hall was a location, it's a very performative job. So we had a bunch of dignitaries coming in, and they wanted flag raisings and Independence Day celebrations, and it's just not something that I was accustomed to. So I called the Mayor's Office of International Affairs and said, can you help me handle this, because I've never done this before. And the first thing they said was, call the FBI, because when you deal with international players, there's a lot of rules and regulations that you have to follow. I was like, okay. We called the FBI. They came in. They did a sweep of the office. They told us, be careful. They'll give you 1 gift today. They'll give you 3 tomorrow. Never leave a foreign agent alone in any room. Make sure we remove computers from common locations. Just a bunch of great information that we followed. Then maybe 4 or 5 months later, it drops that during his time in Borough Hall, the mayor had dealings with Turkey. And I had dealt with Turkey too. They tried to give me 10 beautiful porcelain tea sets. And we returned them all immediately. Before any of this happened, we returned them because it was unusual and we felt uncomfortable. We told them thank you, but no thank you. Yeah.
The Trump administration did drop those criminal charges against Adams, but were you interviewed as part of that investigation?
I was interviewed as part of the investigation. They wanted to know what relationships I had with the Turkish government. So we gave them all of our information, every email that we've ever had. The one thing that we did keep was like a $20, like an ashtray, I want to call it, that we got from Turkey. Like, we want to be honest there that we can't take any gift over $50. So that's why the ashtray was okay. The FBI reviewed it. They opened it up, made sure there was nothing inside of it. But look, we have Turkish residents in Brooklyn, and they're very proud, and we want to make sure we recognize them as well. So I don't want, the administration in Turkey to be a reflection of the great contributions that Turkish residents are doing in Brooklyn. So we met with them one time or twice, but yeah, we met with them twice, and that's it. Yeah.
Now, you've endorsed Zohran Mamdani. You endorsed him in the primary. Explain why.
I think right now, it's a great show, is Politics Unusual. And I think what we're seeing from the Trump administration and the Republican side is that they're doing unusual politics. And what we've done in the Democratic Party for the last 10 years since the revelation of Trump is that we've been doing politics as usual. And we've been ineffective, and people are over the lack of messaging, the lack of aggression, like really countering their proposals. We're just tired of it. And Zohran Mamdani, I think, is a reaction to that is crisis level that we're getting from the Republican side. We can't continue to fight the same fight when they're using different rules to fight it. And I think Zohran understands that. He's going to be aggressive about protecting the people of Brooklyn, of New York City, but also understands that the affordability crisis is something we have to handle aggressively, not incrementally. And I'm looking forward to a change in pace and a breath of fresh air that is not tied to corruption or establishment politics.
Now, Mamdani this week proposed ending the Gifted and Talented program for kindergartners, keeping it in place for third graders. What are your thoughts?
It's unbelievable to me that we have folks in this world that'll say, look, we can't allow for children under 5 to read certain books because they're easily influenced. And no, they're not fully developed. The parent's choice. But when it comes to gifted and talented, that by kindergarten, we can tell your kid is a genius. And I just think it's so inappropriate. I remember a young Dominican boy that was like, didn't get into the gifted and talented. And one of the questions that he answered wrong was, they showed 4 instruments and an easel. And he was supposed to say, which one is not an instrument? And he chose, I think it was the cello. It was somebody playing the cello. And his mom asked him, like, why? Why did he choose that instead of the easel? He's like, the easel is an instrument used by a painter, and he's never seen a cello in his life. Because culturally, it's not something that was reflected in his town and where he grew up. And that one question was a negative on him when he's a very smart kid, should have been in the gifted and talented, but it wasn't culturally relevant. My point being is kindergarten, like, let's let these kids develop socially, learn how to play with blocks, color it within the lines, and then in the 5th grade, having a more aggressive conversation, a thorough conversation about the ability to have rigorous coursework for these young children, I think is appropriate. But it's just like, let's have the conversation and not jump to each other's throats all the time. And I think we can do that.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I look forward to having you back after the November 4th election. Thank you again. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Always fun, Morgan.
Coming up next, we're getting another take on the mayor's race. Former City Council Minority Leader Joe Borelli is joining us next.
This city is in good shape, and we need to make sure we don't go backwards. And I'm going to say you in the words of Bloomberg, when I became mayor, don't it up. It has become so good for you guys that you don't even realize it. But you know what? You're going to miss me.
Mayor Adams not really wanting to answer questions at his first event since dropping his re-election bid, but he did have a warning for whoever his predecessor might be and cautioned voters to choose wisely. Welcome back to Politics Unusual. This warning included cautioning against policies like disbanding the NYPD's Strategic Response Group and eliminating the gang database. And someone who knows these issues well, former Council Minority Leader Joe Borelli, who is now Managing Director at Chartwell Strategy Group. Thank you so much for being here. Now, you posted to X when Mayor Eric Adams dropped out saying, quote, "We will miss Eric Adams." Save this tweet. So don't worry, I saved it. Explain why you feel that way.
Look, I think over the last 18 months, with some of the leadership changes that his administration went through, I think they really have turned it around. You know, I'm someone who takes the subway. I'm in Manhattan many days a week for work. And I really have to say that there has been a lot of public safety issues that have been addressed. The crime numbers, the shooting numbers have gone down. The cleanliness on the streets, I think that's something that the mayor has really improved. So, like, I am concerned that we are going to miss Eric Adams, no matter who's the next mayor. I mean, certainly I have my preferences on who I think would do a better job, and I suspect that's going to be your next question. But I do think no matter who the next mayor is, we will miss at least the Eric Adams of the last 2 years. I think he has made some significant gains in that time.
Since you mentioned it, I will make it my next question now. You know, you are a Republican. Are you going to be backing Curtis Sliwa, or are you going to be backing Andrew Cuomo? I know recently you said that you wanted to pick someone who was maybe coming in second.
Yeah, I mean, I'm rooting for Curtis, right? I'm a Republican. I'm rooting for Curtis. I'd like him to win. However, if he can't get in that second place position, then I think my vote is going to go to the person who is. It looks like that might be Andrew Cuomo at this point. I mean, I've been on this network and every other network bashing Andrew Cuomo for the better part of a decade. So it is pretty surprising, I'm sure, for many people to hear me even admit that this is a consideration for me. But that's how strongly I feel that a lot of the things Zohran Mamdani wants to do will be bad for the city. And to be quite frank, I actually like Zohran Mamdani personally more than I like, some of the other candidates in the race. It's not about that. It really is about the direction that he wants to take the city in. That's my concern. So I'll vote for who's ever in second place. If that's Curtis, if that's Cuomo, they're going to get my vote.
What are you most concerned about if Mamdani is elected?
I'll couch this with I spent most of my career in the city council. So I'm afraid, frankly, that the city council's progressive caucus will have their foot on the throttle, on the gas, and their hand on the throttle going forward. If you look at what the progressive caucus wants to do, they're going to see an ally in Mayor Mamdani and not a check as they had with Mayor Adams, and not a check as they'd have with Mayor Sliwa or Mayor Cuomo. I think that's a real concern. I mean, they have, Mamdani talks about seizing the means of housing and all stuff like that. It's actually the council's progressive caucus that has those policies that wants to, change the way real property is sold, change the way it's owned, change who pays rent and why they do that sort of things. So that's my concern. I'm concerned, as you alluded to before, the dismantling of certain things like the SRG unit, the gang database. But for the life of me, I can't understand why anyone would want intelligence gathered by the NYPD in the course of some investigation on a gang to just simply be forgotten and lit on fire. Imagine if the FBI did that. We all grew up while the FBI was investigating mob cases, and then they put the big poster board up with all, Fat Tony at top and all the underlings and the bosses and the soldiers. Imagine if the FBI just had to, shred all that evidence and information every time they started a case on the mob. The only people that would benefit from that would be gangsters, would be the mob. So I don't understand why the left can't understand the same logic in why we gather intelligence on gangs who are committing the majority of shootings and a lot of the crime in our city. It definitely goes deeper than that. It goes even into the finances of the city. We're facing headwinds. The comptroller's report that came out right after the budget was passed, I think it was this August, the comptroller's report talks about really, an $18 billion or $17 billion gap over the next 3 years. So while Mamdani can have, plans about doing things from childcare to buses, the city actually is going to face financial headwinds in the future, not to mention whatever the Trump administration decides to do. They've already sort of rattled the sabers saying we're going to pull back on the capital side, but the real cuts might come in the form of Medicaid. If the state chooses to continue giving undocumented people, health care, that's going to eventually fall on the city, on the state, and anyone who provides Medicaid. New York City's health and hospitals are a huge provider, right? And it already runs in the red. These are all real concerns that I would have if I was about to become the mayor of the city of New York. And the last thing I'd be doing is promising more free stuff that I couldn't pay for.
You've been critical of Mamdani, but you've also kind of shared some common ground on his property tax plan that would tax or increase taxes on wealthier neighborhoods.
He stole it from me. Call it what it is. Soren, you stole my property tax idea, me and Justin Brannon. Let's be honest about that.
Explain why you support this.
Because, look, it's good policy, right? No matter who you are, if you live in a $5 million brownstone in Park Slope, you should be taxed at the value of $5 million. If you live in a $600,000 house in Staten Island, you should be taxed at that value. It's called an ad valorem tax. It's a Latin way of saying we tax on the value of real property. The way the property tax formula is set up, it allows for areas that have rapid value growth to just avoid paying the tax. So my plan and Justin Brannon's plan, and hopefully Zoran Mamdani's plan, if he becomes mayor, would actually be to have each person reset on sale. So if you're Mrs. McGillicuddy and you've lived in Park Slope since it was a rougher neighborhood 30 years ago, yeah, we want you to still have your tax break so you're not taxed out of your house. But if you're, an aristocrat from France who's parking some money in Park Slope just to have a pied-à-terre when you visit the city and you spent $5 million on it, you should be taxed at the $5 million value. Not just because your house is old, right? If someone in Staten Island builds a $5 million house, by the way, new construction, you're taxed on that $5 million house on day one. We just want to basically make that unified throughout the system. And he's right on this. Zoran Mamdani is 100% right. Eric Adams was right to push it downfield a little bit, but we didn't get any momentum in Albany. But Zoran Mamdani, by the way, he's an assemblyman. He should be the one doing this right now. He should have done it this year as a member of the state legislature.
Thank you so much for being on this show. I really appreciate it, Joe.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Still to come, we're speaking with Garden State residents about smoking in Atlantic City casinos and looking at a new poll that's out in the race for New Jersey governor. Next. A new poll released this week by Fox News in the New Jersey governor's race shows Democratic Mikey Sherrill leading Republican Jack Ciattarelli 50% to 42% among likely voters. It comes after a poll conducted last week showed the race for governor was in a dead heat between both candidates. The latest survey also reveals about 1 out of 7 voters remain uncertain, saying they could change their mind before casting their ballots next month. Another big issue playing out across the river in New Jersey, smoking in Atlantic City casinos. Casino workers have spent years fighting to ban indoor smoking, but the Atlantic City casino industry has pushed back, claiming that a smoking ban would drive away patrons to Pennsylvania, where smoking is allowed. Here's what Garden State residents are saying.
Yes, because I can't breathe in there.
I think they should. I like the fact that smoking is banned inside all buildings.
I don't think they should ban smoking. If someone wants to go in, they can go in, and it's up to them about whether they choose to participate or not.
100%, because secondhand smoke kills as well, and you should not be subjected to that just because you're going into a casino.
And we'll continue to check in with people across our area. Next up, we're going to test your knowledge of the tri-state region, so stay with us. We're flashing back to this week in history. On October 1st, 1931, the new Waldorf Astoria on Park Avenue officially opened. It was designed to be the world's tallest and largest hotel, and President Herbert Hoover actually delivered a broadcast address from the White House to mark the occasion. Finally, tonight we're testing your knowledge. Last week we asked you, what were the New York Public Library's lions, Patience and Fortitude, originally named? The answer, Leo Astor and Leo Lennox. The famed lions were named after the two of New York's Public Library's founders, John Jacob Astor and James Lennox. They were later nicknamed Patience and Fortitude by Mayor LaGuardia. He chose the names because he felt they represented the qualities New Yorkers needed to navigate through the Great Depression. Now, to this week's question. When did Central Park's famed zoo officially open? Now, don't Google the answer, but if you want to take a shot at it, go ahead and scan the code on your screen. That's going to take you to our website, fox5ny.com, where you can type in your answer, then check back here to see if you're right. That does it for this episode of Politics Unusual. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Morgan McKay. Remember, you can stream Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote, live on the Fox local app right now or anytime on demand. Have a safe night. The Fox 5 2025 Tunnel to Towers 5K Run and Walk special starts right now.